Oh.
So hello, good morning. For anyone that wasn't here yesterday, my name's Emilio. I was born and raised in the Bay Area. I play drums. I'm a multi-instrumentalist, where I write music, arrange. Um, I went to SF State and studied music there with John Calloway and Alan Biggs and a lot of great teachers over there. And I also studied with Edgardo Cambon, who is a salsa musician and band leader in the Bay Area, and I've played with his band many times. And yeah, so today, in our Latin percussion workshop, I wanted to talk about congas, this instrument that I have in front of me. And this is a really essential instrument in Cuban music. Um, there's a lot of history in Cuba about, how this instrument came to be. So let's just, we'll talk about, some of the basics of getting a sound out of the drum and, a little bit of rhythms and also some of my ideas on practice routines, how to build an effective practice routine on this drum to keep growing regularly. So before we get into anything, I just want to have everyone say their name and what instrument they play and where they come from, maybe a little background so we can all get to know each other a little bit. So whoever feels like jumping in, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Susie. Susie, I'm Simon's mom.
Oh, hi.
And hi, good to see you, Amelia.
See
I
you.
might be popping out and going to check out the kids' theater class, but boy, I love your class and I there last time. I'm trying to learn a little bit of the Congo as well, or a different version of it. I forget what it's called. I just purchased one. But anyway, that's me, Susie. I live in Mendocino.
Great. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for being here.
Hi, I'm Kathleen. I'm in Santa Cruz, and I've been playing in the salsa band at Lark for years, but that's the only time I get to play that music. But I just love it, and every time I'm playing it, I just feel like I'm in the right place in the universe.
I'm Francine. I'm in Murphy's, California, and I'm jumping in because I feel exactly the way Kathleen feels. When I record our performances at Lark and I'm driving home from camp, I'm just so euphoric going, this is where I want to live, but I don't get to do it where I live. So I'm studying when I can. Thanks.
I'm Sandy Feldhorn. I'm mostly a wind player. I play saxophone and flute, but I also play percussion, mostly Brazilian percussion, but I've, had the opportunity to hit all kinds of things. I'm in Santa Rosa, and I have the good fortune after retiring as a classroom teacher to actually perform music with a variety of bands, mostly playing jazz.
I'm Annie. I live in Casper. I played a couple of times with the Lark band, just clave and stuff. It was so thrilling. I've played a little djembe and a little more ngoma, which is Congolese.
Bought new skins for my bongos. Maybe you can tell me something about tuning and
Yeah, great. Those look like some nice skins. Yeah, I'd
yeah,
love
hopefully not so cheap.
to. Yeah. Yeah, those are definitely worth it.
I'm Sheila Stone. I grew up in Oakland and then San Francisco, was a Lark fanatic from about 80 to 89. I play Appalachian fiddle and banjo, and I used to teach flatfoot dance. And I just retired from 35 years as a nurse. And I said yesterday, and it's still true, I'm allergic to the downbeat, and I'm just here to break my brain open. And I have to leave in a very short time. I'm supposed to be somewhere else right now. So that tells you how much I liked this class yesterday.
Great.
Hi, I'm Helen. I'm in the Bay Area, and truly I'm a flautist through and through, but I could always do with some Latin rhythm, so.
Hi, I'm Cindy Turner. I live in Oracle, Arizona. And gosh, probably about 20 years ago, I bought a set of congas and played Afro-Cuban music for a while. And then something happened and I transitioned to the drum set. So I'm here to return to the congas. Thank you.
Right, I think that was everyone, unless there's anyone that I'm missing. Awesome. All right, so let's get started. So the conga, actually, Annie, I'm glad you brought up ngoma, because the ngoma is actually basically the ancestor of the conga. So the modern conga that we know today, which looks something like this, was developed in Cuba, but based on the Congolese ngoma. And so in Cuba, there's infinite number of rhythms that you can play on these drums, and that is made possible by the fact that not only is it just one, you have one tone basically, but with your hand, there's so many different possibilities to get different sounds out of this just one skin. So specifically for anyone that has congas with them today, I'm gonna go over the basic sounds that you can get out of the drum, and talk about some rhythms and talk about how to work on getting these sounds, and getting used to the hand positions and all that. So yeah, let's just jump right in to the first tone. Is going to be the open tone, and that's going to use a flat hand like this. You want it to be relaxed, but still have that structure so that it's not completely flopping around, but you want it to be very able to move. So the open tone is going to sound like this. You want to hit the drum and let your hand bounce off a little bit so that you're not choking the drum, but you let it ring out. Okay? However, it's important not to raise your hand up too much after doing that tone, because if you notice, something like this gives you a lot more efficiency once you start to play fast. So the first thing you do when playing conga and warming up is just giving it some open tones. Right. And another thing to mention is that you really want your, yes, posture. That's a great question. So, of course, you want to make sure you're sitting up straight, but also keeping your arms straight at the same time. So you don't want it to be like this, right? It's a straight arm that flows like this, but without getting too bent like that, right? So you want it to be nice and even with your elbow so that you get the right motion. All right? So let's keep, yeah, so you just want to make sure that whatever height your drum is and your chair, that your arm can stay straight. So you wanna, when your arms are totally relaxed, your shoulders are relaxed, you wanna make sure that your elbow is pretty much even with the drum. A little bit lower than the drum, but not, you don't want it to be too much of an angle like this, and you don't want it to be too far down like that. So a pretty straight angle between your elbow and the drum, with the elbow just maybe an inch or two lower than the head of the drum. All right? That will make sure that you don't hurt your wrist and that your shoulder is also staying healthy. So we'll give it a little warm up with just a few open tones. All right, now let's talk about one of the most important motions for a conga drummer, which is known either as a bass and tip, or some people call it a heel toe, which is what we use for a lot of rhythms, like a tumbao. We have this, right? So this motion. So I'm going to do it sideways so you can see the angle here. So you let your hand fall down with gravity. You don't want it to be too forceful, and keeping everything completely flat on the drum, right? That's the first motion. Then from your wrist, you're going to lift up like that, leaving the very base of your palm still on the drum. So completely flat, and then lifting up. Then you lift up here and back down. So we do a couple of these on each side. Alternate now on each one. So this is usually what I do when I first sit down at the drum. It's a little foggy here, it's cold, my hands are not warmed up yet. So what I'm gonna do anytime I'm in this situation is an exercise just like that, where I'm very slowly getting my muscles to warm up. Right through here, all these muscles are really important for this motion. And I want them to stretch out slowly so I don't cramp up and so I don't hurt myself. At the same time, this front touch motion is gonna bring in the blood to my fingers so I can play without hurting myself. So a lot of people talk about how playing congas can really hurt your hands, which is true. But with exercises like this, going really slow, not hitting too hard, I'm really just letting gravity do the work. This kind of warm-up can prevent a lot of injury. So here I have two more of the basic tones that you can get out of the conga, which is the bass, play with your whole hand, and the front touch, which is just done by lifting up your fingers and leaving your wrist and palm on the drum. So far we have 3 tones. We have the open tone, we have the bass, and we have the touch. So one thing I like to do a lot is alternate between 2 or 3 different tones as an exercise. So you can go bass, tone. So back to the bass front touch, I have one more warm-up exercise that is my main go-to warm-up, especially if I don't have that much time to warm up. I'll just stick with this one exercise, which will be 2 basses and 2 touches, like that, right after each other. Doesn't matter which side you're starting on. It's good to alternate also. So right now I'm starting on my left. I'm going to switch to my right. Great. So this exercise is great for building up the dexterity and the fluidity in your hands. So over time, you develop more speed with this, and it becomes a great warm-up, and it can be used in rhythms as well. So the way I'm counting this is where the first bass would be a pickup to the downbeat. So you have and 1, and 2, and 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And in Cuban rumba, this is actually used in a rhythm in the segundo part for rumba from Matanzas. So you have so let me just break that down really slow so that everyone can learn this rhythm. This is the salidor, the segundo part for rumba guaguancó, specifically the Matanzas version from Matanzas, Cuba. So you have the same exercise that we've been working on, and then you add. So that's going to be, with the left hand I'm doing a slap, and with my right hand an open. So we just introduced a new tone, which is the slap. Now the slap is pretty tricky, but it's basically, you can think of it like almost catching a bug or whipping your fingers, right? So you want the fingertips to do most of the work here. So I'm letting my hand whip, instead of keeping it completely still like with the open tone. I'm letting my fingers go, all right? And with just a bit of control, I'm letting my fingers do the work there. Now it's important not to do this too hard, and of course it's not gonna sound it's not going to sound very crisp yet, especially since we're not fully warmed up. We've only been playing for a few minutes. So just do this lightly, but without making a tone. Try and let your fingertips stay on the drum. And one way that I was taught, and of course there's many different ways to get these tones. Every master drummer has their own different variations on these things. But the way that I was taught was that to get a slap, you can curve slightly this hand and bring your thumb to the side a little bit closer. And that gives you some support in here. And you let that little pocket in your hand be what makes that sound. So, one teacher that I had explained it as like catching a bug. So you really like imagine your fingers whipping against the drum. Gently, without too much force, we're just lightly and then with a close slap, you put your hand on the drum and you get a little more high-pitched slap. All right, so let's get back to this rhythm. We have slap, open. So everyone, just take a moment to go. Let's work on this motion. Bass, bass, slap, open. Left, right, bass, bass, slap, open. Bass, bass, slap, open. Nice. So all these things are great to work on with lots of patience. Everything very slowly, especially to begin with. So let's talk. Let's start working on learning a tumbao. So anyone who's played congas before has, I'm sure, heard of the tumbao rhythm, which is used in all kinds of different music from Cuba. Do you always keep the other hand on the drum for the slap? You can, but it is not always. No, there's actually basically three kinds of slap. So you have the regular slap with your other hand not on the drum, could be with either hand. This kind of slap is closed, so you're leaving your hand on the drum, but it doesn't necessarily need to have the other hand resting on the drum. For that, we call it a pressed slap or a closed slap, where this hand is resting on the drum completely flat with a little bit of pressure so that you can raise the pitch of that slap. Without, and then with. Can I speak about tuning the drums? Yeah, I'll get to that in just a sec, no problem. So let's, and there's one last kind of slap, which is the open slap, which is a little bit more difficult to get. where you leave your hand off of the drum after doing the slap. And that's most similar to a djembe slap. That's the most transferable tone that we have here on the conga to a djembe. So we have open and then open slap. Alright, so I will get to tuning in just a minute, but let's look at a tumbao and then a variation that is a really traditional variation that less people might know about. So this might be a review for some of you, but let's just go over it so that everyone's on the same page with the tumbao. So we have, we'll think of it in eighth notes. So it'll be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. All right, 1 bar so far. So the first tone is going to be a bass with your left hand, which is the same exercise that we did as a warm-up, because we're going to do the bass and then the touch with our fingertips. Bass, touch. So that's 1 and. Now on 2, we have a closed slap with our right hand, or our dominant hand, if anyone's left-handed. All right, so 1 and 2. 1 and 2. 1 and 2. 1 and 2. All right. After 2, the end of 2 is going to be a touch with our left hand. So 1 and 2 and. 1 and 2 and. 1 and 2 and. On 3, we have a bass tone followed by another touch. So far we have 1 and 2 and 3 and. All right, 1 and 2 and 3 and. So the end of 2, starting on the end of 2, is probably the trickiest part of the tumbao, because you have to raise your hand like this, do that touch, and then you raise it again to do that bass. So that motion, you'll notice, is really important in a lot of different rhythms. That raised left hand, getting the bass, and then the touch. So this is a great thing to practice as well. Okay, so again, I'm going to count out the tumbao. So we have 1 and 2 and 3 and. The 4 and the end of 4 are the open tones. So that will repeat after the end of 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Awesome. Yeah. So you'll notice my technique is really small. I don't do a lot of movements with my hands. I don't raise my hands up very high. And that comes from a lineage of technique taught by the master Changuito, Jose Luis Quintana Changuito, who was very influential in Cuba starting in the late 70s, in the 80s, and up until today. But back in the 70s and 80s, he was playing with a band called Los Van Van, a very influential Cuban band. So his technique is all about efficiency. So when I do this two open tones, you'll see a lot of people raise their hand like this when they do the open tones. Right? But what you can actually do is just leave your hand resting on the rim of the drum, but without touching the skin, right? So sideways, it looks like this. I just raise it just enough so that when I play those open tones, I'm not muffling the skin, but I'm not raising up my hand that much. So I really leave it just as low as I can. And that really comes in handy more when you're going fast, because if you're playing fast, you don't really have time to raise your hand like that. You really have to just whack and go. So when you play that fast, you have to really use as much efficiency as you can. So that's why I really recommend, when you're studying slowly, to conserve the motion as much as possible. Another thing that does is avoids a lot of injury, because when people start playing like this, that's when you can start to even hit yourself on the rim of the drum, which is not good, or you're just playing so hard that it's not good for your hands, because either way you slice it, playing drums with your hands is gonna hurt at some point. So we do everything we can to avoid injury and make sure that we can play as long as we want to without getting too hurt to keep going. So things like this, quiet, relaxed, and efficient, will help you keep playing all night and also not hurt yourself in the long run. So with this Tumbao, of course, there's a million variations on Tumbao, but I want to teach a very old-fashioned way of playing Tumbao, which is still used, but is really good in lower dynamic situations. So something like a piano solo, maybe a flute solo, something that's not going to be the highest dynamics that you want to play. You're just comping for someone else and you want to keep it really relaxed. So this Tumbao was used when drummers used to have just one drum, right? Conga drummers originally would just play with one drum instead of two, and now there's people playing with 3, 4, 5. But originally in bands, there would be one conga drummer with one drum, and they would play different variations on Tumbao using that. So this variation sounds like this. So what I'm doing there is every other beat, I'm leaving out that second, or sorry, every other bar, I'm leaving out the second open tone, and I'm just playing one. So what that is starting to play the tumbao in clave instead of what you could think of as like a unidirectional or without clave playing, which is just the basic one drum. Right? You can start that in any direction of the clave. But this version with the one open tone, that one open tone coincides with the 3 side of the clave. So I'm going to sing the clave and play this variation so you can hear where the clave lines up with that open tone. So ba, 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 So on the 3 side of the clave, whichever direction you're starting in, that open tone is going to line up with the 4 or the last beat on the 3 side. So the 3rd stroke of clave. So now I'm going to start on the 3 side and play that variation one more time with the clave on the 3 side of clave. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Ba, ba. So for everyone with a drum, let me break that down. And even if you don't have a drum, you can do this on a tabletop, which is how I practice when I don't have drums. So the 3 side of clave is going to look like this. Right after that open tone, instead of going to a second open tone like we're used to, it's going to be a front touch with your left hand, which brings you back into the 1 on the 2 side of clave. So you have this motion. Open, touch, bass. Open, touch, bass. Open, touch, bass. Really slow, the whole bar is going to look like this. Your left hand is really working a lot in this variation. Your right hand's only playing the slap and the open, with your left hand basically doing that the whole time. All right. So now let's work on doing that in the context of the rhythm. So we're going to do one bar with the standard 2 open tones and one with just the 1. So it's going to sound like this. 1, 2, 3. With the clave, ba, 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 Awesome. Yeah. Does anyone want to volunteer to play that for the whole class? Feeling shy? That's all right. Yeah? Go ahead, Francine.
My slaps kind of suck, but okay.
Go for
I'm
it.
using a higher drum.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, exactly. So that is the variation that I like to. Can I repeat it slower? Yes, of course, of course. So tone by tone, this half of the rhythm, which is just the 3 side of clave, each tone by tone is going to be like this: bass, touch, slap, touch, bass, touch, tone, touch. I'm going to count it now. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. All right. So that's just the 3 side of clave, or you can play that rhythm for certain sections. Yeah, no problem. Such as in the cha 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 of a danson, you could play just one open tone. Back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, when the congas were being introduced into the orquesta that played danzón, called charanga, they would play with just one open tone, something like this. All right, and so now we can vary that even more with the 2 side of clave, and we'll play just one open tone on the 2 side of clave. However, we're just going to play the and instead of the downbeat. So it's going to sound like this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. We can also do it with the bass. play it up to tempo and then I'll break it down really slow. So it's gonna sound like this. So that is a rhythm that would be used in a conjunto like Arsenio Rodriguez or Chapotin back in the day when they only had one drum and they wanted to make it sound very varied, which is basically what the second drum will do. But without the second drum, if we add this bass tone, you get some more of that low end, and it fills out the tumbao a little bit more. So instead of playing the two open tones like what we're used to, we're gonna just substitute that first open tone on beat 4 with a bass tone. So it's gonna be bass tone. All right, so just that motion instead of we have. So I'm going to play that whole thing really slowly. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. That's getting a little tricky. How's everyone feeling with that? Need some a little slower, more in depth. We good? Awesome. All right. So again, this is used especially in today's music. We use it a lot for low energy or low dynamic sections. So working on playing this really relaxed and with dynamics. We play it. And of course, not every band is gonna swing with that rhythm. This is more of an old Cuban son way of playing Tumbao. Whereas if you're gonna play in a modern salsa or timba band, you're probably not gonna play this. You're just gonna play. Your standard. All right. So with the last 10 minutes, let's get in to that second drum. Many of you might already know the standard variation, but I want to use this, that bass open tone, and then play the standard 2-drum variation. So for anyone who doesn't know this variation, I'm going to break it down really slow. Right, so what we have on the second half is going to be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3. So your right hand does a lot of work on this Tumbao right here, because you're going 1 and 2 and 3. Right, so 2, the end of 2 and the 3 are all played with your right hand in a row, and then you have the end of 3, 4, and the end of 4. So 1, 2, 3, can just play one open tone on the 3 side. So that's the basic second drum variation that we can use in Doombao. And like I said before, yeah, go ahead.
Where does the clave fit again with what you just did with the 2 drums?
Right.
Just so I'm clear.
The second drum, when you play this, that's going to be on the 3 side. So I'll sing the clave and play it. Ba, 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 so this starts right with the clave. Ba, Make sense?
Yeah. So does it mean that the low drum is always on the 3 side?
That's right. With this specific variation, that will be on the 3 side. Let's say we're going to start a song on the 3 side of clave with this variation. It would sound like this: 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Ba, 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 so if you're starting on the 3 side, or if the song is based around the 3-sided clave like that, you would start with that in the first half of the variation. If you're starting on the 2-side, you go with the like that.
Thank you.
And
So you know you've got about 4 minutes left, right?
yes, great, thank you.
Good, sure.
With the last couple minutes, Francine was asking about tuning, so I'll just mention also about tuning. And I'm not sure, do you mean like the actual physical act of tuning, or the pitches that you choose?
It was
Or
the pitches. So I know that it can be in fourths or fifths. I know yours are set lower than mine. I just never sure.
Right. So I don't have a wrench on me, and that's why these are tuned not to a specific pitch. Personally, I don't really have any actual rule that I go by when I tune my own drums. I kind of just go by what sounds good in the moment. And to me, I didn't even tune these, but they just sounded good to me. So I just went with it. However, a lot of people do tune to a specific note. So I'm going to grab a keyboard app so I can hear these pitches. Let me see. Oh, I don't have it, but that's all right. So most people will go in a fourth. It could be A for the low drum and D for the high drum. Some people do that. Some people play with G on the low drum and C on the high drum. Another way to do it is in a minor third. And I like the sound of a minor third because if you hear a lot of old rumba recordings, the drums will be tuned that way. And the minor third gives it a little, obviously, a darker sound, and it's the drums are closer together. So I feel like the conversation, it makes a little more sense to have them be closer together if you're going to be playing more folkloric sounds. So, for example, I might tune to like A and C, or G and B flat. But really, I mean, especially with old drums like these, I kind of just, let it be whatever sound that works, as long as it's not too far apart. You really don't want it to be more than like a fifth apart, because then if you're playing one rhythm, like something like it can sound a little weird if you have like kiki go go, you want it to be a little bit closer together. So not extremely far apart, and probably no closer if you only have two drums, no closer than like a minor second, minor third. All right, so thank you so much everyone for being here. This is really fun. I'm so happy that everyone has taken
Great workshop
today.
Really,
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'm really loving this. I won't be there tomorrow, but I'm hoping you'll record it.
Yes.
Thank
we will.
you.